You did. You crazy son of a bitch, you did.
So Jagex has finally addressed the massive elephant in the room that is microtransactions. With all the talk of the game health update, with different surveys going out, we finally have concrete details, not only of a few data points that they've picked to share with us, but also concrete plans to actually start winding down microtransactions, at the very least that we know of today. So we're going to go over what they have discussed with us, what they plan to do, as well as my thoughts on what I think these changes are, how good they are, and potentially some things that could be addressed. As well as some things that I've seen on Reddit as well that has got me a bit concerned with what people are asking. So first off, the blog and the video that Jagex has released is already a step in the right direction. They've acknowledged that there have been problems with microtransactions, as well as going over what they plan to do to rectify it. Now, for longtime players such as myself, we've heard this message before. We've seen this happen before. This happened when it came to Yak Track. This happened when it came to Hero Pass. These are aspects that we have heard from in the past, and things have either just fallen to the wayside or actively made things worse. So, while this is encouraging news, for those of us who have been around, this should be met with some level of skepticism. We've been burned on this before. We've heard these words before, and Jagex knows this. Jagex knows that they've screwed up in the past, and they are actively trying to work to regain player trust. So overall, it's a good first step, but it's only a first step. This is something that we still need to actually see for ourselves and see a more permanent solution. However, even though the solutions being presented are just temporary, it is still actually impressive just what exactly Jagex is doing with these experiments. The experiments themselves are just data points that Jagex is getting for hard data on what to do with microtransactions. And honestly, they go a lot further than even I was anticipating. I actually had a special hotspot video planned to address Treasure Hunter, and it was about 70% done, and I wanted to get it done before this type of post came out, because we knew that there was something that was going to be on the horizons with microtransactions, but we didn't know when. I was anticipating getting information out in July, and I also didn't expect them to go this far with it. So it kind of sucks that a video that I had about 70% done now doesn't really seem relevant to try to do. But honestly, Jagex is looking for more data points, and the ideas I brought up in that hotspot could help, at the very least, pump the brakes on Treasure Hunter before we just look at removing it entirely. So, if you guys are interested, I can continue working on that hotspot if you're interested on an idea to lessen the impacts of Treasure Hunter. If that's something is interested, please let me know and I can try to retool it to match what we know now. But considering that the disabling Treasure Hunter is an actual thing that they are looking into, it may not be necessary for whatever idea I came up with. But anyway, let's go over these experiments in more detail. So these experiments are just data points that Jagex is trying to understand, with basically putting players' money, quite literally in certain cases, where their mouth is. These are temporary adjustments to the monetization process that lasts anywhere from a day to 2 weeks. The first is coming out in July, which is going to just straight up remove Treasure Hunter and will only instead have payable bundles for stars and knowledge bombs. The second experiment comes with the next double XP event, in which case microtransaction items like proteins, dummies, lamps, and other MTX items will be disabled, which means that players will need to go and actively get different skilling supplies in order to make use of the double XP event. And the last that's coming out in September is going to be a cosmetic shop that is going to have a ton of prior outfits that will be available for direct purchase. There is a fourth experiment with the cosmetic free worlds that's going to be longer, but also was a bit more vague on when that will be coming out. So essentially there will be certain worlds in which case all cosmetic items will be disabled. So what your character looks like will only be their default outfit or whatever they have on their person. There's no transmogs, there's no customizable outfits, it's just going to be what is available in the base game as well as default outfits. So overall, a lot of these do look very promising. And a lot of these go a long way into dealing with a lot of players' grievances. Treasure Hunter is the big one, obviously, but also the changes in the double XP events. That's also a very interesting prospect to be going over, and it does address some of the major concerns when it comes to the game's economy as a whole, which is something that Jagex has been talking about for quite a while now, ever since the May game health update. So it is a breath of fresh air that they are actually addressing what many players consider a bigger issue than just changing boss drops. So overall, despite the fact that we've heard similar promises before, this is something that I think the community as a whole seems to be accepting with cautious optimism, and I think that is the best way to go about this. We've been burned on this in the past, we've been promised in the past that microtransactions would change. And while this is a fantastic first step, we need to see what the permanent solutions are before we can really give Jagex a slap on the back, round of applause, and saying, fantastic job. But everything has to start somewhere, and this does look to be a pretty good first step. Now, there can be more experiments in the future. We aren't just limited to these 4, so there might be ways of having more data points in the future. This again kind of goes back to what that potentially scrapped hotspot would be, in which case Treasure Hunter may still exist, but have different reward spaces. But there's also any number of different ways that they can go about with a monetization process. Now, from the response that I've seen on Reddit, there are 3 things that I do want to go over in more details. That's the cosmetic mega drop, the cosmetic free worlds, and also something that a lot of players seem to be bringing up again. And that is essentially restarting the servers. So first, the cosmetic mega drop. One thing that I'm seeing from this is that from the post, it seems like the cosmetic drops are only going to be available for direct purchase. So essentially, you click on the outfit and it will say exactly how much it will cost to buy it. You don't pay in rune coins, you don't pay in any other currency or like specialty from the game. No, it's just straight up, this is how much dollars, pounds, euros, whatever your unit of currency is, that's how much that these are going to cost. And I'm wondering if maybe instead of just offering for direct purchase, I'm wondering if rune coins might also be an acceptable way to get these items. Because a lot of players want to have these items, but have them available through in-game methods. And while it's not a perfect solution, being able to redeem bonds for rune coins and then use those rune coins to buy these outfits is technically a way for you to earn these outfits using in-game methods. So I'm wondering if maybe that could be a potential avenue that they can go for these cosmetic shops, and just basically having it that you can either just pay for it directly using like $5, $10, or you can pay X number of rune coins to get these items. I think that would be a way to try to encourage a more free-to-play monetization method, while still basically having some sort of monetization way to get these items. Either you pay directly, you pay in rune coin bundles, or you pay a bond that someone else buys off of you to then redeem for these outfits. It at the very least opens up for more ways to get these outfits, and it all still is under the umbrella of monetization. So, hopefully it's not just direct money that's available for this, but it's at the very least an option. Jagex is looking for feedback for this, so I'm wondering if maybe this would be some way to allow more people to get access to these items. And hey, at the very least, if you're going with the more free-to-play, quote-unquote, method, you are removing money from the in-game economy when it comes to just buying the bond. So, there is that. The next thing I want to go over is the cosmetic free worlds. Now, the reason I'm a little bit skeptical with this is that while this is absolutely something that a lot of players like to see, they don't like seeing all of the different mishmash of random fantasy or not fantasy outfits. They just want something that's in a more grounded look for the game. The thing that I'm wondering is how exactly would this tie into monetization? Is this going to be like a different benefit that you'll need to buy independently? Is this something that would only be available to Premier members? Like, how exactly is this going to work for a monetization method? Because just having that available just for every member doesn't really do a whole lot. And while that would be nice for the vast majority of players, looking at this from a monetization method, there's gotta be some sort of catch when it comes to this. Yes, the experiment is probably going to be open to just anyone with a membership, but if we're looking at a more permanent solution, I'm wondering how exactly this is going to play a role to help supplement the income that's going to be lost with something like potentially removing Treasure Hunter. And those are really the only two ways that I can think of that would encourage this. It's either a bonus that, similar to what we saw from the massive misstep that was that player survey, or it's just going to be Premier. I'd like to hear your guys if you think that there could be any other ways that this would work, because I really don't see this happening just from the goodness of Jagex's heart. Because we all know that at the end of the day, these methods still have to bring in some sort of income. It's meant to substitute what their current monetization practices are. So they've got to be earning extra money from these in some way. And honestly, like I said, those are the only two ways that I can think of that they can monetize this. The final thing I do want to bring up, and this isn't something that Jagex has brought up, it's just something that I've seen from time to time on Reddit, and is also something that has gotten a lot more people talking about, and that is a full server reset. Basically, what it boils down to is that there are a sizable, or at the very least, a loud subset of players and ex-players that fully believe that for them to come back into the game, the whole game has to be reset. Essentially, they want everyone's progress to be completely wiped, and then everyone just starts from scratch again. Now, not all players want the whole wiping of the other server. Some just want to have a new server available that is only just brand new players. Kind of like, say, a fresh start world, but without any sort of multipliers. I honestly believe that this is a massive misstep if Jagex ever goes this route. For one, there are so many players that have put in thousands upon thousands of hours and decades of work into their accounts. I am one of those slayers. I've been playing RuneScape since 2004. I first made my account on the closing days of Classic, actually. And through all the ups and downs, my account is deeply personal to me. It is my own personal journey throughout my time in Gielinor. And so, to have players basically say, nah, but because of microtransactions, everyone needs to start fresh again, it's a massive slap in the face for those of us who have stayed since the beginning. And you're going to see a lot of people leave the game, including me. I would personally leave the game if my account was wiped of all of its progress. And you'd have to basically weigh those players who are absolutely going to leave in a mass exodus compared to how many people would be brought in exclusively because of that wipe. Now, the compromise is we'll just make those its own separate servers, but now you've fractured the RuneScape 3 player base even more between what's essentially a fresh start server versus the classic servers. So essentially you've got two different versions of the game running, and I can only imagine that that just increases costs, which is the exact opposite of what I expect the goal of this is. The goal of this is to basically try to minimize the amount of revenue that is lost when it comes to removing microtransactions. So to then think that creating another set of servers is going to be a solution, unless you can just retroactively just take a ton of the worlds that exist currently and just make them legacy ones with minimum loss in costs, which I'm not a tech person, but I imagine that that sort of thing isn't easy or cheap. So you're looking at either increasing the costs to keeping two separate servers, or you're weighing the option between the people that leave from having all their character progress wiped versus how many people would be coming in because of that wipe. And I don't know, that really doesn't seem like a winning strategy, or at the very least, I know that I wouldn't be playing RuneScape anymore if that happened. I honestly think that just addressing the current state of microtransactions is enough to get people back in the game. For the people that just want just a fresh start, it really feels like they just want to have accomplishments just in XP. Which, there's so many other ways that RuneScape has accomplishments. You've got comp capes, you've got Golden Reaper, you've got the combat achievements, you've got various world firsts like races for like 99, 120, 200 mil in a new skill. You've got a mass cut that's coming out that's got a massive push. Competitive group Iron Man. There's a lot of ways that people can share accomplishments. Lots of ways that people can show this is what I was able to do in this game. And you don't need a fresh server refresh for that. You still have ways to show accomplishment. It's just not in a skill cape like you could see in old school. So that is something that I personally will push back on very fervently whenever it comes up. I do not want to see a server refresh. I do not want to see a split server because that's likely just going to increase costs and fracture the player base more than it already has. I think that what Jagex is doing is perfectly fine. It's a first step, and as long as we can address lamps, potentially stars, definitely proteins and dummies, basically if we can address the core issues of microtransactions as a whole, that I think is enough. People who think that the whole game is tainted because of that and we need to basically nuke everything Final Fantasy XIV style, I think that is a bridge too far. So, let's just take this one step at a time. Let's see how many people come back into the game because of these changes to microtransactions once the more permanent solutions actually materialize. Let's start with that before we go for even more drastic measures. Because I don't want to start everything over again. I don't want to lose everything that I've built over 2 decades of playing. And for people to be so flippant about just wiping so many people's progress, it's honestly a great disrespect to those of us who have stayed with Jagex through thick and thin, and have stayed throughout all the good and the bad. And honestly, it just pisses me off whenever I see people just say, your time meant nothing because you played during X time period. It really just pisses me off when I see those sorts of posts. But that's more of a personal thing. To summarize, these experiments look good, and hopefully we see some positive data come out from this. And hopefully we'll also see some more permanent solutions in the near future too. I don't expect anything permanent to really come into play until 2026, but hopefully this serves as a good stepping stone and really shows what players really want when it comes to MTX, and hopefully it brings back people into the game, whether they're from old school coming into RuneScape 3 or just new to RuneScape in general. I really hope that this causes more people to check out RuneScape 3 and really bring it into almost like a new renaissance. Maybe that'll happen alongside Haven Heights, just a brand new area to explore for everyone, and who knows? Mod North says that he wants RuneScape to thrive 25 years into the future, and I would like that as well, and even beyond. I love this game, and I really do want to see it thrive. So, if we can address this problem that's stymieing the game, that would be fantastic. But I'd like to hear what you guys have to say. What do you think about these experiments? Is there any sort of changes that you would make just based on the limited information that we have? Do you want me to release that hotspot that I was working on? Go ahead and leave a comment below, and I'll see you guys for the next discussion. So until next time, everyone, take care.